Hello, welcome to Indie Tutorials. My name is Guillermo and I would like to thank the patrons supporting this channel. Let's continue by improving a little bit how we debug the battle scene, and for that I'm going to install a plugin that I found in the Asset Store, which is free. It's called Advanced Immediate GUI. I will post the link in the description below. So after you install the plugin, you can skip, of course, installing the demo scene that comes with it, but then you can install my version, which has some modified things inside this default script from the plugin. So you can override the default plugin or asset. Okay, so after doing that, we need to make some changes as well into the battle debugger that we made in previous video. I already have the script with the changes. I'm just going to copy paste all the changes here and go through them. Alright, so basically with this advanced AIMGUI plugin, what we do is create some containers in the screen, and then we're going to populate those containers with the player information and with the enemy information. So in the start method we instantiate or create these containers using these enumerators. This is done below. So we add, for the player, we create an instance of the container, and we add for this container all these properties: the name, the health, the ATB, max ATB, the money and the items. Later on we are iterating through all the combatants and just getting a cache list of the enemies, and after having this list of enemies in the scene then or in the battle, we create a container for each of those. This is what I'm doing here. Okay. Finally, in the late update, I'm always checking whether ORK was initialized, and also if we actually have combatants alive in the battle, and then we call these two methods, debug player and debug enemies. So debug player will be monitoring the properties that we created from the values from this combatant. And I can see here that we need actually to add to our combatant status value, we need to create this new status, or sorry, no status but constant. Later on, from the debug enemies, we do the same thing, but just iterating through all the enemies, the containers that we created before. So if we have one enemy, we'll get only one container. If we have 2-3 enemies, we'll get the containers accordingly, and we populate all these properties for the enemies. So let's continue. Let's fix by creating this missing ORK currency constant, and this is done in our constants generator. So let's find it here in the scripts. Actually it is in the editor section. Okay, editor, ORK constants generator. So what we need to do is, let me take the name, and let's put it right here. Okay, so let's add the entry here. Save the script. Pay attention that we haven't saved yet the battle debugger, so we can go to the editor and now go to the edit, generate ORK constants, and go back to Visual Studio. And if we go back to the battle debugger script, now the reference is there. Okay, so now we can save this script, battle debugger, go back to the editor, and let's move to the battle scene or battle arena. And here in the battle debugger, it's complaining the script cannot be loaded. Do we have compile errors? I don't think so. Reload scene. Let me see. Okay guys, this was driving me a little bit crazy, so what I did was to delete the script. Of course, remove the missing component from the object and then re-import it using the import new asset and go to where we had downloaded the scripts. Okay, and that did the trick. So if I go now to the object, I can assign the script again. We can see now that we have our kill key, right? And now what we need to do is to add another component to this game object, which is the one that we imported. So here in the AIMGUI we have this AIMGUI manager, so let's add that to our game object and move it up. Okay, and as you can see, by default it has a key code to enable showing these containers or not. So by default it's set to the letter V, but I will choose another key for me. Let's say F9. It's up to you. Actually I cannot use F9 because it's the one from Camtasia to stop recording or to pause recording, so let me choose F8. Alright, but you can choose any key you wanted. Also, for some reason, when you add this component, you can see that the background color and font color default to nothing. So let's select this one and change the font color to white. Make sure the alpha set to 1. Background color, let's select grayish. Let's save and let's give it a try. I unmute the audio so we can also hear when we activate the ability our beep sound, as well as when the ATB level is low, 14 point, we are not able to execute the ability, so we should hear the error sound that we set in the map, in the control maps. So here let's click on Ctrl P to start the battle. Let's turn around to start the battle. So if I were to click F8, now we can see this logger, and we don't need to go to the inspector and select each of combatants to see the status. So I found it very handy. We see that the health of Chomper is 16 and we have 200 ATB. So if we click on Y, Chomper health start decreasing, as well as our ATB. So Chomper health already 0, is not dying because remember that we set in the health status the die, I will show you after the battle. So let's consume all the ATB from Lightning. Right now it's 8 F5, so we won't be able. And then we have our fail audio. Okay, so let's Control P to cancel play mode and open up ORK Framework. Alright. So what I'm trying to mention about the jumper not dying even though health reach 0 is because in the status value, when we create the status, we set death on to none. Because in the game, the only ones dying are the enemies. Lightning doesn't die anymore, never. Actually, when he reach 0 health, the battle is over and he loses like 1 hour of the time that is being monitored. But for the sake of testing our battle, let's say on minimum here, click on save, and let's go back and give it another try. Ctrl P to start the battle. Let's find jumper, the blind guy. Right, F8 to show the panel, debug panel, and start spamming Y, and the battle end. F8 to hide the debug panel, and then we click accept. There you go. So I think this is a better way to debug the battles, to be honest, instead of having to go to the inspector for each combatant, and you saw that it doesn't update right away. Alright, so let's continue configuring the Thunder ability. So far with the Thunder ability we are just adding basic damage. So let's go to the ability itself, Thunder, and let's scroll down right into the ability settings, and here we have critical chance, so we need to check critical hit. So what it says, the ability can perform a critical hit. Critical hit have their own damage calculation. Okay. So we could use a formula as well here when we will later on, but for now let's add a value. So the value, define the value that will be used, and of course the critical chance says that the critical hit is performed in a random float number between two values. So we, for testing purposes, we want in this case the chance to be higher. So let's say a 70% chance to occur, right? And let me see, in the target what is called user changes, target changes, when we deal the damage, let's add another one right below. We have user critical changes, but then it's target critical changes. So let's add target change. We can ignore this enemy because enemies can use also well this ability, but in this case we want to add a change value again on against the health. We want to show the flying text, not show the console. We want to subtract from the health, and if we were subtracting 100 above, let's give it a try, like 160, and we should be ready to go. Okay, let's add again, use change attribute changes, and here add attribute. Let's select magic and the sub attribute lining again. So let's click and save the settings, and let's try test the battle once more. Okay, so let's Y, and it's working. So let's cancel the play mode and let's continue. I don't know if you saw that the critical damage was not doing the count to value effect, so let's fix that. I think I forgot when we add the flying text in the status. So let's go status, status value, health, and then let me close everything and go to flying text settings, flying text 1, which is the text for the enemy, and we have here critical damage. So let's see, yeah, count to value, we need to check that. We want to start from the 50%. We can change the easy in to ease out quad as well, and let's save the changes. Okay, so what we want to do now is to battle test a little bit also the debug panel, having more enemies. So let's go to combatants group, and let's create a new combatant group. Let's call it Chomper group, and let's add a couple of Chomper combatants. Okay, let's save the changes. We need to make sure of course that now that we are having two combatants in the group, they are spawned in the right place. So let's go to the battle system, and then if I'm not wrong, we have the battle spots here. So we have in the battle setting battle spots, let's collapse player spots, ally spots, and in the enemy spots let's add a couple of spots for the enemies, and let's say that the spot coordinates, it's a world position, so we need to be checking the X, Y and Z position in the battle arena. So let me switch to the battle arena quickly. We have, for example, the spawn position here, and as you can see, the set is pointing in that direction. So if you remember, when we start the battle, the jumper starts right somewhere in between here. So we want the other enemy to be pointing in the X, right? So let's make this change. So member 0 is okay to be 0, 0, 0. But for the second member, let's change coordinates. Let's say 3 meters in the X. And save the changes. Well, no, actually the set should be like 5 meters away from the starting point. Otherwise there will be a spawn on top of lining. Okay, 3 meters. Yeah, so let's save the changes. And what we can do now is to go to the staging scene, and we want to check the jumper prefab. So let's check on resources, prefabs, enemies, jumper, open the prefab, and in the battle component we want to change here in the combatant settings, instead of just spawning jumper, let's use group and then select jumper group. Alright, let's save, to save the prefab, and let's give it a try. Once again, Ctrl P to start the battle. And there we go. F8 to show the panel, and there we have 2 panels for each enemy. So we start fighting one to see if auto target switches to the next one, and it does. And we are out of ATB, so we need to now to add somehow to start increasing the ATB the same way that we did with the stamina. And yeah, we're going to do that on the next video, as well as trying to housekeep a little bit this the battle scene, which I see that we are still having some undesirable game objects like the map crumbs, or for example the jumper clone. I don't want to have a battle component, since we already have a battle component here in spawn. So I don't know if that might cause any problems in the future, but what I'm going to do is to create a prefab specific for the battle, the same thing we did for lining. Okay, so see you on the next video, and I will post a link of the resources for the Patreons to download. Thank you very much.